Julian sat in his beat-up Honda Civic, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The air conditioning had died 3 months ago, and the mid-July heat was turning the car into a mobile oven. But Julian wasn't sweating because of the heat. He was sweating because he was about to try something that shouldn't work, something that frankly sounded insane. He was circling the lot of the busiest mall in the city. It was Saturday, 1 p.m., prime time. A sea of metallic roofs shimmered under the sun. There wasn't a single gap. Cars prowled the lanes like sharks, drivers fighting for position, honking, aggressive. Julian closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of old upholstery and stale coffee. He didn't look for a spot. He didn't scan the rows. Instead, he turned his attention inward. He visualized the front row. Specifically, the spot right next to the entrance doors, the VIP spot. In his mind, he didn't hope it was empty. He didn't ask for it to be empty. He simply saw it empty. He felt the satisfaction of pulling into it. He heard the crunch of his tires on the asphalt as he stopped the car. He whispered a single sentence to the empty air of his car, not as a prayer, but as a statement of fact. "The spot is waiting for me. I am already there." He opened his eyes and turned the wheel sharp left, driving straight toward the entrance. A bold, stupid move. There were 3 SUVs ahead of him. They would block him. There was no way. As he approached the front row, the brake lights of a massive black truck flared red, right in the spot Julian had seen in his mind. The truck didn't just leave, it peeled out aggressively, cutting off a BMW that was trying to swoop in. The BMW honked and swerved away, leaving the lane wide open. Julian didn't rush. He coasted in. The clock on his dashboard flickered. 1:03 p.m., exact timing. He put the car in park, but he didn't get out. He stared at the steering wheel, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. It happened again. This was the 3rd time this week. First, the coffee on the house when he realized he forgot his wallet. Then, the email from the landlord canceling the rent increase. And now this. A cold shiver ran down his spine despite the heat. It wasn't joy he was feeling. It was fear. Because if this worked, if he could actually move reality with his mind just by assuming it was already done, then everything he knew about the world was a lie. He looked out the window at the people rushing by, stressed, angry, hurried. They were playing the game on hard mode. They were fighting the world. Julian had just found the developer console. He had found the cheat codes. But he remembered the warning in the old forum post where he found this technique. When you start looking at the universe starts looking back at you. Julian unlocked his door. He had hacked the system, but he had no idea that the system was about to run a security check on him. 6 months before he became the architect of his own reality, Julian was a statistic. He was you. He was me. He was a graphic designer stuck in the gray zone. You know the gray zone. It's that place where you aren't starving, but you aren't living. You're surviving. For Julian, the gray zone had a specific number, $5,000. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how many freelance clients he took on, no matter how many nights he stayed up until 3 a.m. tweaking logos and layouts, his monthly income would hit $5,000 and stop. It was like an invisible electric fence. If he made $5,500 one month, his car would break down and cost him $500. If he got a bonus, he'd get a surprise tax bill. The universe seemed mathematically programmed to keep him exactly where he was. He called it the plateau. Julian thought it was the economy. He thought it was bad luck. But the truth was hiding in his grocery cart. Every second Friday when his paycheck hit, Julian went to the supermarket. And every single time, he did something strange. He didn't just buy food for the week. He panic bought. Cans of beans, bags of rice, 3 loaves of bread. He filled the cart until the wheels wobbled. He lived alone. He didn't need 3 loaves of bread. They would go moldy before he could eat them. So why did he do it? Because 20 years ago, his father did it. Julian grew up in a house where money was a ghost. It was rarely seen and always feared. His father, a good man beaten down by a hard life, used to say, "We eat today because we might not eat tomorrow." Julian wasn't poor anymore. He had money in the bank, but the software running in his brain was still version 1.0. It was his father's software. Every time he swiped his credit card, a microscopic burst of cortisol, the stress hormone, shot through his veins. He wasn't buying bread, he was buying safety. He was signaling to the universe, "I am in danger. I am scarce. I am afraid." And the universe, faithful as a mirror, reflected that fear right back at him. It gave him more reasons to be afraid, more bills, more near misses. Julian was trapped in a loop, a hamster wheel designed by his ancestors. He thought he was driving his life, but he was sitting in the passenger seat. The driver was a ghost from his childhood. Now, pause for a second. I want you to think about your own life. Have you ever thought about someone you haven't seen in years? Maybe an old friend or a distant cousin? And then, out of nowhere, they called you 5 minutes later? Or you picked up your phone to text them, and their name was already on the screen. It feels like a glitch, doesn't it? Answer yes or no in the comments right now. Have you experienced this? Because if you have, you've already touched the mechanism that Julian discovered. Most people call it coincidence. Julian found out it's actually evidence. Evidence that the world isn't happening to you. It's coming from you. Subscribe to the channel right now, because we are about to peel back the layer of reality that most people are too afraid to look at. The digital clock on the microwave read 2:14 a.m. The apartment was silent, save for the low rhythmic hum of the refrigerator, a sound Julian had come to associate with his own stagnation. He was sitting on his second-hand IKEA sofa, the cushions sagging in the middle, illuminated only by the harsh blue light of his laptop screen. He wasn't working. He wasn't sleeping. He was doom-scrolling, that modern form of self-flagellation where you endlessly consume the highlight reels of other people's lives while your own battery drains to zero. He watched a 19-year-old crypto millionaire buy a Lamborghini. He watched a travel vlogger dive into the crystal-clear waters of the Maldives. He watched people living in high definition while he felt like he was rendering in 144p quality. His thumb hovered over the trackpad, ready to close the browser, ready to accept another night of mediocre sleep before another day of mediocre work. But then, the algorithm did something strange. It didn't serve him a cat video or a prank compilation. It served him a podcast with a low view count. The thumbnail was simple, almost boring. Just a woman sitting in a chair talking. The title caught his eye not because it was flashy, but because it was terrifyingly direct. The world is imaginary. Julian clicked. Not out of hope, but out of a cynical curiosity. He wanted to hear someone spout nonsense so he could feel smarter than them. He wanted to debunk the magic so he could justify his misery. The video began. The woman, Laurie, spoke with a calm, unnerving certainty. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't selling a course. She was explaining the mechanics of a machine Julian didn't even know he was living inside. "Most people don't know the secret," she said, her voice cutting through the stale air of Julian's living room. "The secret is that life is imaginary. Why? Because it follows your mind. Everything you think, everything you say, all your internal conversations, they are being materialized." Julian snorted, reaching for a slice of cold, day-old pizza on the coffee table. "Right," he muttered to the empty room. "So I imagined this debt? I imagined the transmission blowing on my car last week? Give me a break." He went to pause the video, but her next sentence stopped his hand mid-air. "You think you are observing reality?" she continued. "But you are printing it. The universe is a mirror that never lies. If you say, 'I am broke,' the universe says, 'Understood.' Here is an unexpected bill to confirm your statement. If you say, 'I am lonely,' the universe clears the room." Julian sat back. He looked around his apartment, the peeling paint in the corner, the stack of unpaid bills held together by a paperclip, the silence. He thought about his morning routine. What was the first thing he told himself when the alarm went off? I don't want to do this. I'm never going to get ahead. Why is this so hard? He realized, with a sinking feeling in his gut, that he had a 24-hour radio station playing in his head. Call it Poverty FM. And the universe was the most loyal listener he had. He wasn't just thinking these things. He was commanding them. He was the director of a movie he hated, screaming action on scenes of misery day after day. The woman in the video shifted topics. She spoke about ancestral echoes and limiting beliefs. How do you know if you have a limit? She asked. Look at what repeats. Look at the loops. Julian closed his eyes. The loops were everywhere. The $5,000 income ceiling. The relationships that always ended at the 6-month mark. The specific anxiety he felt in the grocery store. That was the kicker. The grocery store. Julian had money in the bank right now. Not a fortune, but enough. Yet every time he walked into a supermarket, his heart rate spiked. He would buy 3 bags of rice, cans of beans he didn't even like. Why? Because his father used to do that. His father, who grew up hungry, had installed a scarcity program into Julian's hard drive. Julian wasn't buying rice. He was buying insurance against a famine that wasn't happening. He was running old software on new hardware, and because he believed in the scarcity manifested. The car broke down. The clients didn't pay. The math always balanced out to 0. The universe never lets you lie, Laurie said. It will rearrange atoms to make you right. Julian paused the video. The room felt smaller. The shadows felt heavier. If this was true, if reality was actually a holographic projection of his internal monologue, then he wasn't a victim. He was the perpetrator. He was the architect of his own prison. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping city. A police siren wailed in the distance. Okay, he whispered. If I'm the architect, let's see if I can move a wall. He needed a test, something low stakes. He couldn't manifest $1 million tonight. His brain would reject it as a lie. The critical barrier the woman spoke of would slam shut. He needed something simple. That was when he decided to go to the mall. That was when the parking spot incident happened. He had found the secret code. But as he walked into the cool, recycled air of the mall, he realized that knowing the code and controlling it were two very different things. He had opened the door to the law of creation, but he had no idea that the guardian of the threshold, his own subconscious mind, was waiting on the other side with a baseball bat. Monday morning arrived like a gray curtain over the city. Usually, Julian's alarm clock was the starting gun for a daily race of anxiety. He would wake up, check his bank balance, calculate how many days until rent was due, and then drag himself to his desk to grind out logos for ungrateful clients. But today, Julian didn't get out of bed. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, initiating the protocol he had named the version update. If reality was a hologram projected by his internal software, then he was currently running Julian v1.0. That version was buggy, prone to crashes, and capped at a $5,000 monthly limit. He needed to install Julian v2.0. Julian v2.0 didn't worry about rent. Julian v2.0 didn't drink instant coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. Julian v2.0 was magnetic, abundant, and calm. Julian threw the covers off. I am him, he whispered. I am not becoming him. I am him. He walked into the kitchen. The jar of instant coffee was sitting on the counter, mocking him. It was the safe choice, the responsible choice. It cost 12 cents a cup. Julian grabbed the jar and threw it into the trash can. The glass shattered against the metal bottom. The sound was shocking, violent. He put on his best jacket, a blazer he usually saved for weddings, and walked out the door. He went to the artisanal cafe on the corner. The place smelled of roasted beans and expensive almond milk. The menu listed a latte at $6.50. His hand reached for his wallet, and immediately the warning sirens in his head began to wail. $6? Are you insane? That's a carton of eggs. That's bus fare. You're bleeding money. It was the guardian of the threshold, his subconscious mind. It was trying to protect him. It remembered the lean years. It remembered his father counting pennies on the kitchen table. It screamed that spending money was dangerous. Julian stood at the register. The barista, a girl with a nose ring, looked at him expectantly. "What can I get you?" Julian took a breath. He didn't just need to buy the coffee. He needed to change the feeling of buying the coffee. He remembered the concept from Laurie's teachings, the joint bank account with the Creator. He visualized a massive golden vault in the sky. It wasn't his meager savings account. It was a cosmic account co-signed by the universe itself. The universe had infinite resources. Every time he swiped his card, he wasn't depleting his own stash. He was using the company card of existence. "Oat milk latte," Julian said, his voice steady. "And add a pastry." He tapped his card. Beep. Approved. He didn't flinch. He forced a smile. "Keep the receipt," he said. He sat by the window, sipping the foam. It tasted like victory, but beneath the surface, a war was brewing. For the first 3 days, this method felt like magic. He walked differently. He spoke with authority. He ignored the price tags at the grocery store. He was acting as if. But nobody warns you about the mental fatigue of playing God. By Thursday, the novelty had worn off, and the exhaustion set in. Monitoring every single thought, 24 hours a day, is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a minute. You can do it for an hour. But eventually, your arms get tired. Eventually, the ball wants to shoot back up to the surface. The ball was his old programming, and it was fighting back with a vengeance. It happened in the bathroom, the most mundane setting for a spiritual crisis. Julian had just stepped out of the shower. The mirror was fogged up. He plugged in his hairdryer. The white noise of the machine filled the small room. Whirr. And then, the thoughts came. They didn't trickle in. They flooded in. "Who are you kidding?" the voice sneered. It sounded like his own voice, but distorted, cruel. "You're just a graphic designer with a credit card balance. You're playing pretend. You spent $40 on coffee this week. You're going to be homeless." Julian froze. The hairdryer was still running, blasting hot air against his scalp, burning him slightly. He didn't move. "You're a fraud," the voice continued. "This law of creation stuff is for crazy people. Look at your bank account. It hasn't changed. The number is actually lower. You're digging your own grave." The anxiety hit him like a physical blow to the chest. His heart hammered. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. This was the extinction burst. When a habit is about to die, it fights the hardest right before the end. His poverty mindset was screaming for survival. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. He saw the fear in his own eyes. He looked small. He looked tired. "Stop it," Julian said aloud. But the hairdryer drowned him out. "You're going to fail. You're going to fail. You're going to fail." He wanted to smash the mirror. He wanted to curl up on the bath mat and cry. He wanted to go back to the safety of the gray zone, where he was miserable but secure. He turned off the hairdryer. The silence that followed was deafening. He remembered the woman's story, the story about drying her hair and almost giving up. She had said, "It's tiresome. You have to be obsessed. You have to be willing to look at the negative thought and say, 'I don't choose you.'" Julian dropped the dryer on the counter. He gripped the edges of the sink, his knuckles white. "I am not a victim of my mind," he hissed at his reflection. "I am the commander." He closed his eyes and visualized the negative thoughts, the fear, the scarcity, the voice of his father, as black smoke swirling in his head. He imagined a ventilation fan turning on, a massive industrial fan powered by the joint account. Whoosh! He visualized the smoke being sucked out of his ears, out of the room, dissolving into the ether. "I create the vacancy," he said, "and I fill it with gold. He forced himself to think of the Italian villa again. He forced himself to smell the espresso. He forced himself to feel the linen shirt. It was agonizing. It required every ounce of willpower he possessed. It was mental weightlifting, and his muscles were screaming. But slowly, the panic receded. The heart rate slowed. The Guardian lowered its sword, confused by this new resilience. Julian opened his eyes. He was sweating. He felt like he had just run. The moment the tongue relaxes, the internal monologue, the sub-vocalization that narrates your worries, stammers and halts. Silence. For the first time in weeks, the voice of the Guardian was muted. The anxiety about the eviction tried to knock on the door, but Julian had removed the doorbell. He moved his awareness down. Shoulders, heavy, hands, dead weight, legs, turning into concrete. He was entering the hypnagogic state, the borderland, the frequency where the brain waves slow from beta, alert, stress, to theta, creation, dream. In this state, the critical barrier, the logical firewall that separates the conscious from the subconscious, melts away. The skepticism was gone. The logic that said, "You are broke," was offline. Now, he was in the void, the vast black canvas of the Creator. Julian didn't just think about a house. He stepped into it. He transported his consciousness to the location he had chosen. Not a specific address, but a specific feeling. The scene rendered instantly. High definition, 8K resolution. He was standing in a kitchen. But not his kitchen. The floor beneath his bare feet wasn't cold linoleum. It was warm, textured hardwood. He could feel the grain of the wood against his soles. He wiggled his toes, grounding himself in the simulation. He walked to the counter. It was a massive slab of white granite, cool to the touch. He ran his hand across it, feeling the smoothness, the solidity. He tapped his fingernail against the stone. Click, click. The sound echoed in the spacious room. It was real. He turned to the stove, a high-end gas range. He reached out and turned a dial. He heard the hiss of the gas, then the thwomp of the flame catching. He felt the sudden heat on his face. He grabbed a lemon from a bowl on the counter. He brought it to his nose. He scratched the rind with his thumbnail. A sharp, zesty burst of citrus scent filled his nose. The smell was the key. The olfactory sense is the strongest link to memory and belief. By smelling the lemon in a kitchen that didn't exist yet, he was hacking his brain's GPS system. He was telling his subconscious, "We are here. This is not a drill. This is current coordinates." Then he walked to the living room. There was a linen sofa, cream-colored, expensive. He sat down. He sank into the cushions. He felt the fabric, rough yet soft, against his arms. And then he did the most important thing. He didn't jump up and down with excitement. He didn't cry tears of joy. He sighed. A sigh of relief? No. A sigh of contentment. He looked at the imaginary view, a skyline of the city, peaceful and glittering, and he felt normal. He practiced the feeling of having. When you have something, you don't long for it. You don't beg for it. You just use it. He picked up a remote control on the table. He turned on the TV. He felt the weight of the remote in his hand. "I love this place," he whispered in the dream. "I'm glad we moved here." He stayed in the simulation for what felt like an hour. He made coffee. He walked onto the balcony. He felt the wind. He signed a check for a large amount of money and felt no pain, only gratitude. He was encoding a new memory. He was writing a history of the future. He reached out to the joint account. He visualized the Creator sitting next to him on the sofa. Not as a distant God, but as a partner. "Thank you," Julian said. "This is perfect." And the presence next to him seemed to nod. "It is done." Julian felt a click in his chest, a physical sensation, like a gear locking into place. It was the feeling of the Sabbath, the state of rest that comes after the work is finished. He didn't need to visualize anymore. He didn't need to try. It was finished. The order was placed. The shipping confirmation was in his inbox, even if the package hadn't arrived at the door yet. He allowed the scene to fade, not because it was disappearing, but because he was leaving the room to go to sleep. When Julian opened his eyes back in the box-filled apartment, the room was pitch black. The air was stale, the floor was hard, but Julian lay there, staring into the dark, and smiled. He didn't feel fear about the eviction anymore. He looked at the boxes and didn't see a man being kicked out. He saw a man who was already packed for his upgrade. He touched his chest. The anxiety was gone. It had been replaced by a strange, heavy certainty. The kind of certainty you feel when you know the sun will rise in the east. You don't hope for it. You know it. He whispered to the empty room. It's already happened. He rolled over and went to sleep, ignoring the ticking clock. He slept deep, dreamless, the sleep of a wealthy man. He had no idea that while he slept, the bridge of incidents was being constructed at breakneck speed. A pipe had burst in a luxury apartment complex across town. A tenant had to leave urgently. A landlord was scrolling through old applications, frustrated, looking for someone reliable, someone quiet. A portfolio he had uploaded to a freelancer site 2 years ago was being viewed by a creative director in London who had insomnia. The atoms were rearranging. The calls were being routed. The simulation was buffering the new level, and when the sun rose, the phone would ring. The morning of the deadline did not arrive with a fanfare of trumpets. It arrived with the pale, sickly light of a cloudy Tuesday crawling across the floorboards of Julian's apartment. The room was a skeleton of its former self. The posters were down, leaving rectangular ghosts on the peeling paint. The furniture was sold. The boxes were stacked against the door like a barricade against an invading army. To any rational observer, this was the scene of a defeat. It was the visual definition of hitting rock bottom. A man sitting on a mattress on the floor, drinking the last dregs of coffee from a paper cup, waiting for the sheriff to come and change the locks. Julian looked at his phone. 9:00 a.m. The guardian of the threshold, that ancient reptilian part of his brain designed to keep him alive, was screaming. It was pounding on the glass of his consciousness, shouting, "Pack the car, run, call your mother, beg for a loan. You are homeless in 3 hours." The physical symptoms of panic tried to manifest. His palms began to sweat. His stomach churned, the acid of anxiety rising in his throat. This was the echo. It was the biological response to a threat, passed down from ancestors who had to run from lions. But Julian did not run. He did not call his mother. He sat on the floor, crossed his legs, and took a breath. He initiated the state of the Sabbath. In the ancient texts and the teachings Laurie had referenced, the Sabbath wasn't just a day of the week. It was a psychological state. It was the state of rest that comes after the act of creation is finished. If you are still working, you haven't finished creating. If you are still worrying, you don't believe it's done. Julian had built the new reality in the 4D world, the world of imagination, last night. He had felt the granite. He had smelled the lemon. He had signed the contract. In the quantum field, the event had already happened. The physical world, the 3D world, was just a slow, laggy printer trying to catch up to the digital file he had already sent. "It is done," Julian whispered to the empty room. "I am just waiting for the receipt." He took a sip of the cold coffee. It tasted bitter, but he didn't react. He wasn't drinking it as a poor man. He was drinking it as a wealthy man who was temporarily roughing it during a move. The distinction was invisible, but it changed the entire chemical composition of the moment. 9:14 a.m. The silence of the apartment was shattered. The phone buzzed on the floorboards. The sound was violent, vibrating against the wood like a trapped insect. Julian's heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but out of recognition. This was it. The bridge of incidents. He looked at the screen. It wasn't the landlord. It wasn't the collection agency. It was a number he didn't have saved, but the area code was 415, San Francisco. He picked it up. He didn't rush. He slid his thumb across the screen. "Hello? Julian. Is this Julian Vance?" The voice on the other end was breathless, fast, laced with the high-octane stress of a corporate crisis. Background noise, people shouting, phones ringing, bled through the line. "Speaking," Julian said. His voice was steady, lower than usual. "Julian, hi. This is Marcus Thorne from Apex Heavy Industries. Look, this is going to sound frantic because it is. We exchanged a few emails about 4 years ago regarding a rebrand. You probably don't remember." Julian remembered. He had been desperate back then, begging for a junior role. They had ghosted him. "I remember, Marcus. What can I do for you?" Okay, here's the situation, Marcus said, the words tumbling out. Our creative director just walked out, literally 20 minutes ago, threw his badge on the desk and left. We have a pitch deck for a Series B funding round due on Monday. The investors are flying in from Tokyo. If we don't have this branding package finalized, we lose the round. We lose everything. Julian listened. He heard the desperation. In the old version of his life, this would have been a moment to panic, to overpromise, to scramble. But Julian V 2.0 was calm. He was the solution. That sounds stressful, Marcus. I was digging through the archives, Marcus continued, looking for anyone who understands our specific brutalist aesthetic. I found your old portfolio. I don't know how we missed it back then. It's exactly what we need. It's weirdly specific. It's like you designed it for us before we even existed. Julian smiled. He had designed it. Last night. In the dark. I can help you, Marcus. Thank God, Marcus exhaled. Okay, look, I don't have time to interview you. I don't have time for HR. I need you on a retainer, immediate start, like right now. Can you be online in an hour? I can, Julian said. What's the rate? The retainer is $15,000 a month, Marcus said quickly. And because I'm asking you to jump onto a sinking ship, I can authorize a signing bonus of $20,000. Wiring it today. Once you sign the NDA. $20,000. Julian looked around the empty apartment. The boxes, the dust, the eviction notice. The universe was precise. The debt was $12,000. The move-in costs would be $5,000. The bonus covered everything with change to spare. That works for me, Julian said. But there is one logistical issue. Name it. I'm currently relocating. Julian lied smoothly. Or perhaps it wasn't a lie. I'm between apartments. My lease ends today. I need to secure a workspace where I can focus on this pitch deck without interruption. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy pause. Julian held his breath. This was the test. The bridge of incidents had to hold the weight. Then Marcus laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. You've got to be kidding me. Why? The guy who quit. The director? He just forfeited his corporate housing. The company leases a unit downtown for execs. It's fully paid for the next 6 months. We were just going to eat the cost, but if you want it, it's yours. It has fiber optic internet, a standing desk, the works. It's empty. I can text you the door code right now. Julian closed his eyes. The friction was gone. The barriers were dissolving. The universe wasn't just opening a door. It was dismantling the wall. Send me the address, Julian said. I'll see you in an hour. He hung up the phone. The screen went black. He sat there for a moment in the silence. He didn't scream. He didn't pump his fist. He felt a cold electric shiver run down his spine. The bridge of incidents. A man had to quit his job. A CEO had to panic. A file had to be found in a dusty digital archive. All of these separate chaotic events had been orchestrated like a symphony to lead to this exact moment. And Julian was the conductor. He stood up, grabbed his single bag, and walked out of the apartment without looking back. He left the notice to vacate on the fridge. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was just a piece of paper in a timeline he no longer inhabited. The Uber ride across the city felt like a transition sequence in a video game. The loading screen. The scenery changed from the gray, cracked pavement of Julian's old neighborhood to the gleaming glass and steel of the financial district. The address Marcus had sent was for the Meridian, a spire of obsidian glass that pierced the smog and touched the clouds. Julian stepped out of the car. He was wearing his blazer and jeans. He looked like he belonged, but his heart was hammering a rhythm of pure, unadulterated awe. He wasn't nervous about the job. He was nervous about the reality of what was happening. He typed the code into the keypad in the lobby. Beep, click, green light. The doors slid open. The elevator ride was smooth and silent, your ears popping as the numbers climbed. 10, 20, 30, 34. The doors opened onto a plush hallway. It was quiet. The air smelled expensive, conditioned, filtered, sterile. He found Unit 34B. His hand hovered over the handle. This was the moment of truth. If he opened this door and it was a standard beige corporate apartment, then maybe this was just luck. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But if it matched the vision, then the world was truly a hologram. He pushed the door open. He stepped inside. The first thing that hit him was the smell. It wasn't the sterile smell of the hallway. It was sharp, acidic, fresh, citrus. Julian froze in the entryway. His eyes darted to the kitchen island. There, sitting in a ceramic bowl, was a pile of fresh lemons. A welcome gift? A remnant from the previous tenant? It didn't matter. The smell was exactly the scent he had hallucinated in the dark 3 nights ago. It hit his olfactory nerve and triggered a sense of déjà vu so violent it almost made him dizzy. He took a step forward. His shoes clicked on the floor. He looked down. It wasn't carpet. It wasn't tile. It was wide plank hardwood, the color of honey. He could feel the texture of the grain through the thin soles of his sneakers. The same friction, the same warmth. Julian dropped his bag. It hit the floor with a thud that echoed in the vast open space. He walked toward the kitchen, drawn like a moth to a flame. The counter. In his vision, it had been white granite, cool to the touch. He reached out his hand. His fingers were trembling. He touched it. Stone. Cold. Smooth as glass. He tapped his fingernail against the edge. Click. Click. The sound went through him like a lightning bolt. It was the same audio file, not similar. The same. He had heard this sound before it existed. He had created the sound in the 4D world, and now the 3D world was playing it back to him. He turned slowly to face the living room. The sun was pouring in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. And there it was, the sofa, cream-colored linen, low profile, modern. Julian walked over to it. He felt like he was sleepwalking. He felt like an intruder in his own dream. He sat down. He sank into the cushions. He ran his palm over the fabric. It was rough, textured, organic. He looked out the window. The view of the skyline was framed exactly as he had seen it. The angle of the sun, the way the shadows fell across the other buildings. He had been here before. He had lived this moment on Tuesday night, lying on a mattress on the floor of a dump. He had collapsed the timeline. He had folded space and time to bring this moment to him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A notification. He pulled it out. It was his banking app. Wire transfer received $20,000. Apex Heavy Industries. The numbers were stark black against the white screen. He was rich. He was safe. He was successful. But Julian didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He sat there gripping the linen fabric of the sofa until his knuckles turned white. He felt a profound, chilling terror mixed with awe. It wasn't the joy of winning the lottery. It was the terror of the man who discovers he is in the Matrix. He looked at the lemons. He looked at the granite. They looked real. They felt real. But he knew they were just hard light. He knew they were projections of his own consciousness. "It works," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It actually works." The realization was heavy. If he could create this, then what else had he created? The poverty? The loneliness? The struggle? He realized he wasn't a victim of a cruel world. He was the god of a small, personal universe, and he had been a terrible, negligent god for 30 years. Julian sat on the linen sofa for hours, watching the sun track across the sky. He didn't start the work for Marcus yet. He couldn't. He was processing the ontological shock of what he had done. He remembered the podcast, Laurie's voice. "The universe never lets you lie." He realized now that she wasn't speaking in metaphors. She was speaking physics. He thought about the double-slit experiment. It was the foundational mystery of quantum mechanics. When scientists fired photons at a barrier with two slits, the photons behaved like waves, ripples of potential, going through both slits at once. They created an interference pattern. They were everywhere and nowhere. But the moment the scientists placed a sensor to watch which slit the photon went through, the behavior changed. The wave collapsed. The photon became a particle. It chose a path. It became matter. The observer effect. Reality does not exist until it is observed. Julian looked at his hand. He flexed his fingers. He was the observer. For years he had observed himself as broke, unlucky, and stuck. He looked at the wave of infinite potential and focused his camera on the path marked struggle. And the quantum field, obedient and neutral, collapsed into that reality. It hardened into bills, rejections, and breakdowns. But when he entered the theta state, when he hacked the system and observed a new reality with the sensory vividness of the granite, the lemon, the linen, he forced the wave to collapse differently. He tricked the simulation. He observed the wealth before it was material. And the universe, having no choice, rearranged the code to match his observation. The bridge of incidents. Marcus, the panic, the empty apartment, was just the rendering process. It was the simulation loading the new level. He stood up and walked to the window. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, looking down at the city below. Thousands of cars, millions of people, the ants. They were rushing to jobs they hated. They were worrying about money. They were replaying arguments in their heads. They were broadcasting their own poverty FM signals 24/7. And the universe was saying, yes, yes, yes. I am tired. Yes. I can't afford this. Yes. They don't love me. Yes. Julian realized the terrifying responsibility of his discovery. The joint account with the Creator wasn't a limitless credit card you could swipe and forget. It was a live feed. Every thought was a transaction. Every emotion was a purchase order. He was safe now. He had the money. He had the job. But he knew the danger. If he relaxed, if he let the guardian whisper the old stories back into his ear, if he started to feel like an imposter, the wave would shift again, the walls would close in, the contract would be canceled, the apartment would be lost. The glitch worked both ways. You can build a paradise or you can build a hell. The tool is neutral. The hammer doesn't care if it builds a house or cracks a skull. The architect is you. Julian looked at his reflection in the glass. He didn't see the tired graphic designer anymore. He saw the operant power. He saw the man who had hacked the law of creation. I am the architect, he whispered to the glass. And somewhere in the static of the air, in the hum of the city, in the space between the atoms, the universe whispered back, "Command accepted." He turned away from the window. He walked to the desk. He opened his laptop. He had a pitch deck to design. He had a world to build, and he promised himself right then and there that he would never, ever let the old program run again. Now, I want you to do something uncomfortable. I want you to look away from this screen for a second. Look at the room you are sitting in right now. Look at the clutter on your desk. Look at the balance in your bank account. Look at the text message you are afraid to send. It is tempting to say that these things happen to you. It is comforting to believe that you are a leaf floating in a chaotic river, at the mercy of the economy, your boss, or bad luck. But if Julian's story is true, then that comfort is a lie. The scary truth is that you are not the leaf. You are the river. Every complaint you uttered this morning was a brick you laid in the wall of your own prison. Every time you said, "I can't," the universe commanded its atoms to ensure you couldn't. You have been building your reality brick by brick, thought by thought, for your entire life. But here is the good news. If you built this prison, you have the keys to dismantle it. You can hack the code. You can update the version. But be warned, the moment you wake up, the responsibility is total. You can no longer blame the world for the movie you are projecting. If this story made a crack in your perception of reality, if you felt that shiver of recognition, then you are ready for what comes next. We are building a community of architects here, not victims. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss the next upload. Because if you think Julian's story was strange, you have no idea how deep the rabbit hole goes. Next week, we are going to leave the realm of psychology and enter the realm of hard physics. We are going to talk about the double-slit experiment, the moment science accidentally proved that the world literally does not exist until you look at it. The simulation is rendering around you right now. The question is, do you like what you see? And if not, do you have the courage to look away and imagine something better? I'm watching the comments. Tell me, what is the one glitch you've experienced in your life that you can't explain? I'll see you in the next frame.